the Southland, 1 week at a time. SCV Chat starts now.
Welcome to SCV Chat at 7 o'clock on a Monday afternoon, so you know what time it is. It is time for your weekly episode of SCV Chat. I'm your host for the evening, Moose, and before we get started, please remember, the views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the SCV, its GEC, nor Divisions Brigade, camps, or subsidiaries, strictly those expressing them. How is everybody doing in Dixieland tonight? We have a great show for you planned as we continue our Confederate Catechism series. And we're going to ask some questions tonight that I think a lot of us have gotten in defending our southern homeland in the war between the states. A question that I just love because it's going to dive into what in the world does Civil War mean? Look up the definition, people. Wasn't a civil war. I love the term war between the states because that is what Mississippi uses. I think Dr. Mitcham goes by the war of northern aggression. I know he said a couple of other things. One I discovered recently was Mr. Lincoln's War. Love that one. But we do have a great show for you planned, and I have name dropped our guest. The reason he's not on screen is because he's a humble man. He's a mentor of mine, and I'm going to force him to listen to an introduction of himself every time he's on the show if I can help it, because he is just a very accomplished historian, an author. As I said, I look to him as a mentor. I ask him a lot of help in my journey to earn the title historian because a lot of academic historians haven't earned the title and are putting a bad rap on historians. Me and Dr. Mitcham have also talked about that. So I'm looking forward to having him on. Good evening to Past Commander-in-Chief Paul Gramlin Jr., David Pope, Michael C. Hardy, Army of Tennessee Commander Carl Jones. Yes, rare frop to everybody out there. And Loy, and I see a couple other people, but I'm stalling because I have to load Dr. Mitcham's accomplishments, and it takes a while. He is giving me the stank eye behind the screen because I'm talking so nice about him. As I said, a very humble man. He is going to ring me out when I get him on this show. But, of course, if you don't know who Dr. Samuel Mitcham is or Dr. Sandy Mitcham, he was born, of course, in the great state of Louisiana. He attended Northeast Louisiana University, North Carolina State University, and, of course, the University of Tennessee for his PhD. He was a professor of military history, and he is a very accomplished author. We brought him on the show many times. Of course, Bust Hell Wide Open, The Life of Nathan Bedford Forrest, actually have his book right here. It wasn't about slavery, exposing the great lie of the Civil War by Dr. Mitcham. Signed. So I have 2 copies of this now. And the funny thing is I don't remember how I got the second copy, but they're both in my library at home. And of course, I actually moved this one to my SCV office just to keep it by because I do enjoy reading it. We brought him on the show numerous times. And of course, I could talk all day about his historical accomplishments, writing more than 40 books, the Encyclopedia of Union Generals, the Encyclopedia of Confederate Generals. One of my favorite books is actually over there, and it tells the stories of some of the privates of the war, which is a phenomenal book that, again, we did bring him on for. And I believe he's the winner of the Jeff Davis Golden Medal from the UDC. I've realized I've pulled up one of his old bios that I used when I first brought him on the show for Bust Hell Wide Open. So, but I do believe he is a well-accomplished historian. Again, I think he's one of the best out there today. So without further ado, everybody please welcome Dr. Sandy Mitcham.
Thank you very much, Moose.
It is good to have you on, Dr. Mitcham. You might actually need to refresh your screen. Your mic has somehow disconnected.
What now?
Yes, you somehow your mic disconnected. It was good when we did the post show, so maybe just hit refresh and it will come back on. Let's see if I can do anything. Try anything now?
Okay, how's that?
No, sir. Just hit a quick refresh on your computer, and that should fix it.
All right.
You can hear them, so it might be on my end. That's interesting. Dr. Mitcham, say hi to everyone.
Hello. Does that work?
Huh.
Where's refresh? Is that the delete button?
I still can't. I don't know if that's a problem with my software or what. I'm turned up all the way. So I don't know what the problem is. Maybe it's on my end if y'all can hear them. If you guys, okay, y'all can hear them. Let me refresh my computer and I will be right back. Entertain the people.
Oh.
Now I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, sir. I can.
Okay, good.
Everybody else could. So glad to see that we got that fixed. It wouldn't be a live show if I didn't have something like that to deal with. I would ask everybody to please share this episode out to help us out. I was getting some stuff ready when the show was getting started, so I won't be able to share it out until we take a commercial break in about 30 minutes. But as I said, I'm very excited for tonight. And I told Dr. Mitcham this, and I guess I can start building up towards that episode. I was actually going to invite him on towards the end of the Catechism series to bring everything together and tie it up. He still is coming on if I don't annoy him too much tonight, that is. But I said I wanted to bring him on because there's just some questions that I think he would be great to answer. And I don't like having guests come back so close because I do think that guests deserve to have a special episode with them on. But you just can't not look a gift horse in the mouth sometimes. And when you know someone that's perfect for these questions, you kind of have to bring them on. We will be having some guests continued. I'm actually waiting on a couple of guests to get back to me, so I'll be hopefully announcing them soon.
Good.
But to kind of start off tonight, and this is one we actually got a question on last week that I think you'd be perfect for. And we've talked about this speech, and Dr. Mitcham already knows where I'm going, on the show before. I believe we watched an Abbeville Institute, which is a great resource, by the way, and reacted to what they said about the speech. But now I kind of want to hear Dr. Mitcham's viewpoint. This isn't in the Catechism, so I am kind of breaking the series rule, but I think it's still one of the most kind of brought up things when you're trying to defend the South is the Cornerstone speech. If you're not familiar with it, go read it. You'll understand why they throw it in our face a lot. So, Dr. Mitcham, without any further ado, kind of what's your rebuttal on the Cornerstone speech?
Well, it was made in March of 1861 in Georgia. It was by Vice President Stevens. He allegedly said that slavery was a cornerstone of the Confederacy. And he later said he was misquoted, but he didn't exactly specify what he was misquoted about. He may have said it. Richard Taylor thought he said it, and he never forgave him. But it doesn't really matter whether he said it or not, because he was a vice president, and vice presidents don't make policy. It's hard to get that across to people's heads, but if you can imagine Joe Biden overruling Barack Obama when he was president, or J.D. Vance locking Donald Trump's heels, that's the intellectual equivalent. There have been powerful vice presidents in U.S. history like Dick Cheney, but Alexander Stephens was not one of them. He was not Jefferson Davis's choice. It was the choice of the convention. They didn't give Davis any input whatsoever, and had they done so, he probably would not have picked Stevens. Stevens and Lincoln were good friends, but not Stevens and Davis. And you gotta, if you're going to quote a vice president, you ought to quote Thomas Marshall. He was the 28th vice president of the United States, and what he said was, once upon a time there were two brothers. One ran away to sea, and the other became vice president of the United States, and neither one was ever heard from again. And that's pretty much the case with Stevens. Davis asked him to do a couple of things early in the war, and he wouldn't do them. They asked him to go to Arkansas and speak to the legislature, try to get them to secede. Stevens used the usual excuse. He had what you call a diplomatic illness. He said, "I'm too sick to go." And Davis wouldn't call on him again. Made Stevens mad. They split. When the Senate was not in session, Stevens would go back to Georgia. He spent most of the war in Georgia. He was a non-entity. If you're going to quote somebody from the Confederacy, how about quoting the president, Jefferson Davis, who said, "All we want is to be left alone." He said it many times. It really didn't matter what Stevens said if he said it. And like I say, there's some issue as to whether he did or not. But
That's
pretty much for Stevens.
Yes, sir. I couldn't agree more. I think if you're going to quote anybody on why the Confederacy was here, you might want to quote the president. I personally think he was misquoted. When we did the episode on it, we did find him a diary entry of his. So he had no thought that this was going to be ever read. He just wrote in his diary that he had been misquoted, and he tried to correct it, and it never really happened. Go watch again the Abbeville Institute episode we did on that. But I couldn't agree more. I think he was misquoted. And again, if you're going to go after someone, why don't you go after someone who is actually more involved, like Jefferson Davis? And again, the famous quote, "All we want to do is be left alone." And I kind of use that now in my day-to-day life when people ask me to describe what I want from the government, and I'm like, to leave me alone. So I couldn't agree more. And thank you, Dr. Mitcham.
Well, the only time that Stevens did something significant during the war was a month before Appomattox. He met with Abraham Lincoln and a couple of others, Seward, to try to get some kind of negotiated peace. But to show what a non-entity he was, Davis didn't even give him the right to negotiate. To make a binding agreement, I should say. He did negotiate, but nothing came of it. And Stevens, now he didn't amount to much in terms of importance. If Davis had died, that would have changed, obviously. But he was picked because they needed somebody from Georgia. At least they felt they did. When the Deep South seceded, the largest state in terms of population was Georgia. And initially, the delegates to the secession convention intended to appoint Robert Toombs president. And the equivalent of a search committee showed up in Toombs's door, and he was drunk. Toombs had a drinking problem, and he was chewing tobacco, and he let some drip out of his mouth onto his white shirt. And the delegates were not exactly what you call impressed. So they went to Plan B and they picked Stevens, and it wasn't a fortunate choice.
Yeah, and you won't hear me quote him often, but I believe it was even John Adams said that if you want the most useless job in this country, become vice president.
Sounds just like him.
It does sound just like him, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Of course, I was paraphrasing, but I mean, it makes a good point, especially back in the 1860s. The vice president was just the chair of the Senate. He didn't do anything. Every once in a while, he might throw a vote one way or another, but other than that, I remember watching a documentary. I went through a let me try to learn something from John Adams phase. Didn't end well. And I remember reading that quote being like, yep, that kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Mm.
But the next kind of question I want us to dive into is, and this is the one I probably get the most when I try to tell people the war wasn't about slavery. It was about economics. It was about this. It was about that. There's a couple things you could point to. And of course, your book is a perfect example of that. But this is probably one I ran into a lot. People would send me quotes of it. People would read it verbatim. And we're going to kind of throw it all into one big lump. So I'm just going to trust Dr. Mitcham here to go about it the best way he thinks. But the Articles of Secession from the states. You know, I always get quoted those when I'm in an argument.
Well, 4 of the states did mention slavery as one of the causes for secession. That wasn't the only cause they mentioned, but they did mention them. And you got to remember, these were the elite of the various states. They were wealthy. The slave owners were disproportionately represented in the secession conventions, and especially vis-a-vis slavery. But slavery was an issue, but it certainly wasn't the only issue. 3 times they mentioned Northern support of terrorism. They didn't use the word terrorism, but they talked about John Brown and his servile insurrection. And that was a major factor in the South leaving the Union, because there were 6 major abolitionists supporting John Brown, backing terrorism. And of course, when the terrorists seized Harper's Ferry, a Democratic president, James Buchanan, sent in the Marines. And the Southern editors all over the country were asking, could we expect this kind of behavior from a Republican president like Lincoln? And the universal answer was no. So that was definitely a factor. You never hear Northern support for terrorism listed as a cause for the war, but it was. 2 great African-American historians, W.B. Du Bois and Frederick Douglass, both agree with me on this point. It was. Both of them called Harper's Ferry the first battle of the Civil War. And it's kind of hard to argue with them.
Yeah, and I believe we mentioned it on the first episode of this series when we were talking about how economics played a part in the budgets and how they heavily favored Northern industry, and how that money kind of went back into Washington, D.C. or industry or both. But, you know, I don't know if we touched on the terrorism acts and how that also played a war. Fear, if you can't protect your people and your government saying we're not going to protect your people, I mean, that's a big reason to secede.
Yeah, it really was. And of course, there was the economic factors too. Tariff is certainly part of it. I've got some Northern friends, good friends. Don't tell anybody, okay? But they bought into this. The Civil War was all about slavery myth, and I took the positions all about money. And they argued a while, and then I told them, all right, what was slavery about? And that kind of stumped them because I answered the own question. It was about money. Slavery was about money. The blacks were not enslaved because they were black. They were enslaved because they were available. And they were not enslaved by Southerners. There were a number of groups involved in the whole enslaving process, starting with Africans and Muslims. There were a lot of slavers who were Muslims. They would not enslave Muslims, but they would enslave everybody else. And they sold them to New England flesh peddlers at a rate of about 200 gallons of rum per slave. And they were sent overseas on New England ships. We estimate 24 to 25 million people boarded the ships. 4 to 5 million of them left the ships before they reached port because they were dead. They made no effort to take care of them. But of course, the Africans and the Muslims get a pass. The New England flesh peddlers get a pass. Everybody gets a pass but the Southerners, and we were just the end users. In fact, that was one of the causes I listed and for the war was Northern hypocrisy. And you don't hear that today, of course, but if you read the newspapers of the times, the Southern newspaper editors hit that hard that the Yankees were hypocrites. I mean, Massachusetts, Donnie Kennedy looked this up. Massachusetts had slavery 78 years longer than did Mississippi. And if you count Samuel W. Marvick, one of the early slavers in New England, it was 94 years. They don't seem to be able to decide whether he was a resident of Massachusetts or not, but he was definitely a big slaver. And it was hypocritical. I mean, you got your slaves, you sold them, you made your money, you made a profit. Now you want somebody else to free their slaves for free. That smacks of hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we've already talked on the causes of war. A lot of my notes were from Dr. Mitcham. And I believe we kind of cover that pretty well. But, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's weird that they're going to focus on one thing that's listed in these secession documents, but it's because they can twist it to fit their narrative, and that's why they do it. So that's why we started this series, hopefully to give everybody the ammunition, and I think Dr. Mitcham has done a good job on the secession documents. Just, I mean, tell them to look at more than one resource. Tell them to read it through, perhaps. That would help. Why has some states mentioned it and some haven't? Especially if we all were able to form a government together. Northern hypocrisy is a great point because they didn't care about Southern people. They didn't care about the economy. They didn't care about us. They just cared about money and power. And again, another reason the war was fought was because of economics.
Yeah. And I found out something in this past year that I didn't know for sure. I'd heard rumors. But Abraham Lincoln was a slave owner.
Wow.
He was. Dr. Kevin Orland Johnson discovered a document proving that in the University of Chicago archive. And he'd been looking for it for a while, I think, but he found it. Lincoln he inherited his slaves from Robert Todd, his father-in-law. He owned, 150 of them. And Todd did what many Americans do. He postponed writing his will, even though he was one of the richest men in Kentucky. He did it till he was on his deathbed, and that was bad enough. But he had the plague. So he only had one person witness his probate, and that was a doctor. If I needed to witness your probate, I'd do it. But if I found out you had the plague, I'm not coming within 2 miles of your house. And that's the way people felt. Kentucky law required 2 signatures on a probate. I only had one, so the probate judge kicked it out. And you had 13 different groups of people, families, vying for interest in Todd's estate. And 4 people up in Springfield got a share, and they had their attorneys sell the slaves. If Lincoln had inherited slaves and freed them without making a profit, we wouldn't have any complaints. But he didn't. He got money. And incidentally, one of the 2 lawyers involved was John C. Breckinridge, a cousin of Mary Todd, who later became a Confederate lieutenant general, or so he said. He was Secretary of War. He was a major general for sure. And he said he was verbally promoted at the end of the war, but I don't know if he was exaggerating or not. But he was definitely involved. Now, the trail gets murky at that point. As a historian, you'll appreciate this. There was a preacher, great preacher named Reverend William Barlow, and he gave great sermons, extremely prolific writer. When he died, his estate had enough manuscripts to fill several railroad cars. He was that prolific. He was also pretty good at seducing vulnerable church women, which got him fired. He was a Baptist. He got fired from, I think, 9 churches. And the word got around to the denomination, don't hire this clown. And he had to find a new way to make a living. And what he did was glorified Abraham Lincoln. He wrote at least 5 books. And according to him, Lincoln was one step behind Jesus Christ. And sometimes it was a very small step indeed. And he approached his research the same way he approached the pulpit, corrupt. They didn't have metal detectors or document detectors in those days, so he'd wait till nobody was looking and stuff the Lincoln documents in his briefcase and walk out with them. And that's how so many of Lincoln's papers and probates and whatnot ended up in the University of Chicago. When Barlow died, he gave his papers to them. But yeah, Lincoln was a slave owner, and he sold his slaves.
Now that is a big wow, and a historical find right there.
Yeah. I would want for you to call Dr. Johnson and put him on your show.
I definitely am now. I've been planning on doing it now for a couple months. I think you sent me his name, and just honestly with business and stuff, haven't gotten around to it. But we do actually have some Lincoln-centered questions on the catechism that I think he'd be great to answer. I saw one that I'm just loving and can't wait to get to when I was trying to find the questions for tonight. But of course, now we have to have another Lincoln bashing episode. I can't wait for that now. That is just a big, big discovery. Something I've never even heard of. I've heard rumors that he was, but you could never find evidence to sustain it. But now that we have the evidence, doesn't that add a bit of just interest to what started the war. And I couldn't agree more. So Northern hypocrisy now is kind of even added to that. If that information was a bit more known back then and some Southerners knew it, I mean, again, just I love it. I'm eating it up. It's been a great episode on Todd saying penny salute.
Well, let me say one good thing about Lincoln. At the Hampton Crossroads Conference, where they were trying to negotiate peace, actually a Confederate surrender, Lincoln told them he was not going to call off the abolition of slavery. But he did say that they should be compensated. And he thought $400 million, which was huge in those days, would be a good figure. Now, Seward, his Secretary of State, was against that. But Lincoln said, no, the North was complicit in slavery. We should share the expense. Which, like I say, I don't get to say anything good about Lincoln very often, but he showed a little class that time.
Some surprising, but again, I've talked about it before on the show. Lincoln was all about not being the president that the Union dissolved under. So I'm not surprised he did that. I'm just a bit shocked that he did it because, again, Lincoln sent a lot of people to their death and liked a butcher as his general. I'll put it like that, and alcoholic on top of that. But before we kind of get into the questions, I want to thank Dr. Mitcham for answering these because, again, they're not in the book, but I thought it was very important to ask these questions. And again, I hope to do full episodes on these two topics in the future. But without further ado, let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back we got 3 questions for Dr. Mitcham tonight. It's going to follow the same format as we had with Commander-in-Chief Donnie Kennedy on. I'll ask him a question. He'll give his answer to it, and then we'll go into the book's answer and what Dr. Mitcham thinks about the book. Chris said we don't have to knock alcohol. Not knocking alcohol per se, a lot of use of alcohol. I'll knock that, the drunkenness. But, of course, tonight's commercial break is sponsored by scvchat.com. If you're having a hard time finding the episodes, want to see our favorite video of the month, our archived episodes, we have a lot of episodes with Dr. Mitcham on there, and so much more, please check out scvchat.com. And if you want to help us reclaim the narrative 1 week at a time, please join us on Patreon. For $2.50 a month, you can throw some support our way with Feed a Moose level. If you want to become a real chat head, that's $10 a month. You get your name scrolling at the end of every episode in our end credits and a public thank you. And, of course, you get a lot of behind-the-scenes content. For $30 a month, you can become the merch tier, where you get exclusive merchandise that only you will get. Not even the owners of SCV Chat will get it, me and Connor. And, of course, for $80 a month, you can sponsor us if you have a business, book deal, what have you. You can sponsor with us for $80 a month, like our good friend, Dr. Chris Cummins, MD. If you've fallen off a fence recently and have a bruise the size of Texas, go check out Dr. Chris Cummins. He'll make you feel well, treat you with some good Southern hospitality. And, of course, if you tweaked your knee, he'll make sure that knee's feeling good by the end of the day. So go check out Dr. Chris Cummins for some Southern hospitality. And we will be right back after this quick commercial break.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. A place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
Welcome back to SCV Chat. And yes, I want to thank our sponsors for making these shows happen. And of course, thank Dr. Mitcham for coming on. Again, we will hopefully in the future do full episodes on the Articles of Secession from the states, and probably another one on the Cornerstone speech. I feel like there's still a bit there you could dive into in terms of just how to rip these two things apart, because again, I feel like those are a lot of things that are thrown our way. But Dr. Mitcham did give you some great ways to fight back, and I do encourage everybody to use it. And of course, from past Commander-in-Chief Jason Boshears, I've read many of Dr. Mitcham's books. I love the writing style, and his research is thorough. He writes from a good base and lets the facts guide. And I couldn't agree more. Again, I have, I probably have 4 or 5 Dr. Mitcham books now. As I said, I got 2 books. It wasn't about slavery. I still don't know where the second one came from, but I do happy I have it, because I have one at the house and one at the office now. And of course, I'm trying to start building a collection. Of course, I got Shelby Foote's books behind me. But now we get to dive into the questions for tonight. And again, go support Dr. Mitcham. He was nice enough to come on tonight. And kind of these 3 questions are going to be some interesting ones. So the last episode, we focused on slavery. The episode before that, I believe it was on the causes. And this kind of continues that. If slavery wasn't the cause of the war, actually, no, the first question was about secession, and we'll dive into secession again soon, trying to cover all our bases with these questions. But so the question previously was, was slavery the cause of the war? And we, of course, answered no, and Commander-in-Chief Donnie Kennedy gave a rebuttal. But now the question for Dr. Mitcham today is, what then was the cause of the war?
Well, when you talk about slavery, people mistake results for causation. Freeing the slaves was a result of the war, but it was not the cause by lie.
Mm-hmm.
The cause of the money, the cause of the war, in my opinion, more than anything else, was money. Now, a war that big had more than one cause, but it was largely about money. I mean, the South seceded. The abolitionists, the Lincolnites, had majorities in both houses. They could have passed any bill they wanted to. They could have passed an amendment outlawing slavery and sent it to the states for ratification. But they didn't do that. What they did was pass a tariff, increasing the Morrill tariff. You know about it. Increased the tariff from 24 to 47%. Just short of doubling it. And for items with iron, it was 51%. And it stayed in effect till 1913. So they didn't want to abolish slavery. They wanted money, and they got it. In fact, kind of had to have it. The tariff revenue was, what was it, $53,188,000 in 1860. Amounted to over 94% of federal income. The rest was from land sales. Didn't amount to a lot. That's pretty huge. And when the South seceded, they lost, 82% of that. So Lincoln felt he had to get the South back, or the federal government was going to go under financially. Or else they were going to have an income tax and sell bonds at a loss. That was going to be an economic disaster. Would have at least, I think, led to a recession, possibly a depression in the Midwest. Had that occurred, there's, of course, no way Lincoln would have been reelected. They also lost their major source of income, which was textiles. In those days, you didn't do textiles without cotton, unless you were in England. You had sheep, but even that was well under half. So I think he felt he had to get it back, but he wasn't really willing to compromise. He kept the Morrill tariff. And he had to find a pretext for going to war, and he got one, Fort Sumter.
Yeah, and that's some questions we're going to actually have in a future episode is Fort Sumter. But he wanted to go to war to preserve the Union and to make sure that his Union didn't go under money-wise. And I think we talked about this, and I know I've said it already, but the tariffs and how a lot of the money that the government got even went to just Northern industry or Washington. It lined the pockets of Northern businessmen. The South saw that as more of a slap in the face of the fact that it's obvious that you're only caring about Northern interests. And of course, all that plays a part. We've talked about what has played a part in it. And so I'm kind of happy we've dived into the cause tonight. And so how the book answers this question, again, I want to hear Dr. Mitcham's thoughts on this. What was the cause of the war? The cause of the war was, 1, the rejection of the right of secession of the 11 sovereign states by Lincoln, and 2, the denial of self-government to 8 million of the people occupying a territory the size of, or half the size of, Europe. Lincoln himself said of those people that they possessed as much moral sense and as much devotion to the law and order as any other civilized and patriotic people. Without consulting Congress, Lincoln sent arms to the South, and it was the war of a president elected by a minority of the people in the North. In the World War, Woodrow Wilson declared that no people must be forced under sovereignty, under which does not choose to live. When in 1903, Panama seceded from Colombia, the United States sided with Panama against Colombia in support of Panama's right to self-governance.
Well, there was a little bit more to it than that. We also wanted the Panama Canal. Colombians didn't want to give it to us. Panamanians were willing to trade that slice of territory for their independence. So they got to help the U.S. Marine Corps, and it was a done deal when they showed up. But we supported secession long before then. I mean, what is the Declaration of Independence except the most beautiful ordinance of secession ever written? Mm-hmm. They knew that back then. Lincoln did some intellectual breakdancing to try to prove that the states were really created by the federal government. But everybody knew that was nonsense. And clearly we had the right to succeed. Many Northerners agreed. In fact, that's why Lincoln had to walk a very fine diplomatic line in the Fort Sumter crisis. He had to start the war and make it appear that we did it. And he was successful. Jefferson Davis was not mentally equipped to deal with a crook like Lincoln.
You gave a compliment to Lincoln early on. I'll tell a quick story. I'll give Lincoln the compliment that he's probably one of the best politicians out there when it comes to politics and how he makes sure the world perceives him. Because there's a difference between a politician and a statesman. A statesman knows he is in service to the people and he is in service of his state. And a politician feels like this is all about him. And I think Lincoln understood politics better than anybody. He made sure that the war was always perceived that it was about slavery, so he would have some moral high ground. I mean, you look at historians today, and that's what they all point to. I will say Lincoln probably helped point them to that direction. And of course, making sure he always appeared as the good guy. This wasn't my idea. This wasn't my war. I'm fighting a righteous cause. And he is a great politician. I'll give him credit. He knew how to stir the pot just the right way to make sure everything fell on his side. And I'll agree with Dr. Mitcham. He did a lot of dancing to make sure that it happened, but a lot of it did happen.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll say about Lincoln, the only thing I have common in Lincoln is when I didn't have a beard, me and Lincoln both got told by women that we do not look good without facial hair. And that is why we both grew out facial hair. So that is the only thing I have common with Lincoln. But I do agree with, of course, the book and Dr. Mitcham.
Well,
it's crazy. We're celebrating 250 years of the greatest secession document ever written by, of course, Thomas Jefferson. And people will still look you in the eye and say the South did not have a right to secede. It blows my mind.
Well, it was clearly a secession in 1776. And, of course, that led Lincoln later to lie in the Gettysburg Address. And he said, 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. It wasn't. Read the documents for a change. I mean, it mentions these, these 13
free and sovereign
colonies are and by rights ought to be free and independent states. So you gotta, you're dealing with a pretty slick character when you're dealing with Abraham Lincoln. You got to be very careful.
Yeah.
I found the documents on the Fort Sumter crisis, which was buried in Volume 4 of the official records of the U.S. Navy in the War of the Rebellion, starting about page 400. That took some work. But Lincoln was a fine politician, but he was a terrible military leader. He filled a lot of cemeteries, but he was a military illiterate. All his pre-war career was in the Black Hawk War. He served 90 days, and all he succeeded in doing was get busted from captain to private. Jefferson Davis, on the other hand, made one reconnaissance in the Black Hawk War and personally captured Chief Black Hawk. So he was rewarded by, they allowed him to take Black Hawk back to civilization. And Black Hawk liked him and said he was going to mount to something one day. The other person, escort officer, if you will, was Lieutenant Robert Anderson. You probably already know this, but he was the commander at Fort Sumter later. And one of the little oddities of history, this is where Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis met. Davis was an active duty officer. Lincoln was a militia officer. His militia company had to be sworn in to active duty. And Lieutenant Davis was given the task of doing that, and he did. But I don't think either one of them made any impression on the other. Neither one of them ever said anything about it later. Not even sure they remembered it at the time. But anyway, people don't realize what Abraham Lincoln really was. He is the most overrated man in American history, in my humble but accurate opinion.
Well, I mean, where do people rank him in the all-time presidents, if not first, second? The only person that they think beats him in first is George Washington. And then half the time nowadays, they're saying he overlaps George Washington. And I'm just shocked. And again, proves just how good of a politician he is, that he made sure he would look good. And all I have to say is read Lincoln's diary, please.
Well, he's got a lot of willing accomplices in our profession. We're at one of the lower points in historiography, where we have people whose motto is not seek the truth, it's serve the agenda. And I'm hoping we're beginning to get out of that a little bit, but won't be soon enough for me, but maybe in your lifetime.
I think we'll get out of it. I think it's going to take a lot of work because first people are going to focus on the founding generation. Again, a lot of people that are even starting to become good historians still don't understand what happened with the war between the states. Because again, I feel like we've been lying about that much longer. So sadly, but hopefully this information can help everybody fight for it and at least plant the seed of doubt. At least give people something to think about.
Yeah. Well, be prepared to take some licks. I got more hate mail out of it wasn't about slavery than all 45 of my other books combined. And some of them came positively unglued. Fortunately, I thought it was funny. But
well, when you kind of bust that bubble, and I mean the title, it wasn't about slavery, that's already going to make people mad. They're going to die on the hill that it was all about slavery. That was the only major cause of the war. And I tell people, I'm like, it's like looking at one puzzle piece without looking at the whole puzzle and being like, I know what the puzzle is. No, you don't. And
well, there are a number of other causes too that aren't normally mentioned. Northern corporate greed we've touched on. Need for reunification we brushed aside, but that was Lincoln's motivation is money. Without reunification, he was sunk, and he knew it. Of course, we talked about abolitionist terrorism and the Republican willingness to protect terrorists was part of it. And there were cultural differences, which are hard to pin down, but nevertheless were very real.
Well, yeah, we touched on the first episode of the series, the cultural differences, and how that did play a good part in this. I mean, people don't realize it. You know, since the founding of the government, we've been like going at it because there's a cultural difference that you can trace back to Jamestown, Virginia, and Maryland. And it's still here today if you think about it. There, North versus South has been around since the start of this. Now, see that this is the brainwashing coming in. Since I almost said since the start of the country, but since the colonies, since the founding till today, 1607 to 2025, you can trace back these differences.
Yeah.
But me and Dr. Mitcham are known for long phone calls, and I get off topic. He gets me excited and he gets me going because I'll start thinking on the same wavelength as he is. So let us get back to the next question.
Oh,
and
sure.
I know you're going to find this one interesting. You know, what did the South fight for?
Home and fatherland.
Mm-hmm.
They were invaded, and they were real men in those days, and they fought and they killed, and they didn't apologize. I was reading one of General Meade's staff officers' diary. Colonel Lyman, he was a Northerner, and part of his job was negotiate prisoner exchange, and he got to see a lot of rebel privates in the process, and he was shocked. He said, they look you right in the eye. They do not apologize. And the thing I admire most about them is their stoic manliness. And at that time, we had suffered a number of military defeats, Gettysburg, Vicksburg, Chattanooga. And the Northern public thought it was about over. And there were just a few remnants needed to be mopped up. They would take Richmond. They would be back home by September of 1864 in time for the kids to go to school. And Lyman said, it's not going to happen. And it didn't. They were shocked when General Lee started filling cemeteries with dead Yankees. They lost more men than Lee had, and he still stood between them and Richmond. If our high command hadn't bungled the Atlanta campaign, I think we would have established our independence. Because the Yankees were ready to quit, but only after the fall of Atlanta did they see what we in the Vietnam era call the light at the end of the tunnel, and they reelected Lincoln. Had Atlanta not fallen, I don't think Lincoln would have been reelected, and he agreed with me on that issue. Frankly, he told his generals that.
Yeah, I forgot about the riots in, I think, New York about the war.
Yeah, I did a little book on that. Did you ever see it?
I don't know if I read your book, but I think I got the information from you. We were just talking one day, and I had no idea that New York was getting very sick of Lincoln. And, of course, the Gettysburg Address played into that. He knew that he was losing support and needed to get it back. And a lot of Southerners thought that if he would have lost, that we would have won our independence. And I do agree with that statement that if we would have won the Atlanta campaign, I just don't think Northern support would have reelected Lincoln. And I think a lot of people would have voted for a candidate that was, it's time to end this.
Yeah. I think that's, we could have won the war one of three ways: militarily, diplomatically, and politically. Military, we lost it, in my view, in Vicksburg and Gettysburg. Diplomatically, we lost it with the Emancipation Proclamation, because after that, the general public of France and England were not going to let their ruling class go to war. over what they perceived to be slavery. Lincoln has succeeded in reframing the debate. And again, we get back to the brilliant politician that you mentioned. That left politically, we had to defeat Lincoln for re-election. And had we not bungled the Atlanta campaign, I think we might have succeeded. I think it was winnable. By winnable, I say just hang on till November 5th, 1864, and let them vote Lincoln out.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. And like, for instance, my ancestor, I wear a memorial bracelet from him, for him. And this is from a California Division Commander Todd. Go check him out, by the way. This is great work. Private S.O. Dawes was in the cavalry here in Mississippi. And I can tell you for a fact he wasn't a slave owner. He was just this poor farmer that came from South Carolina to the great state of Mississippi. And the wheel fell off his wagon and boom, he was here. And he went to war because of invasion. He was scared for his home. Took pride in his home, and how dare this man invade states that just wanted to secede. And I feel like a lot of people felt a calling from their the founding generation. These people wanted to secede from a government too, and they had to fight for it. They had to die for it. They had to protect it. And I feel like a lot of our men felt the same way. And of course, the book's answer, and this is in all caps, by the way. So our our great author here, of course, the late great Tyler, or Lion Tyler, put this in all caps. It fought to repel invasion and for self-government, just as the fathers of the American Revolution had done. All caps, that one statement. I love it. And then he goes on to say in his answer, Lincoln himself confessed at first that he had no constitutional right to make war against a state. So he resorted to subterfuge of calling for troops to suppress combinations of persons in the southern states too powerful to suppressed by the ordinary process. Now that's in quotes.
Mm-hmm.
It was impossible to understand how the southern states could have proceeded in a more regular and formal manner than they did to show they acted as states and not merely as combinations. It shows the lack of principle that characterized Lincoln when later he referred to the southern states as insurrectionary states.
Well, you could argue, I think, that the states disappeared in 1865. What we've got now is provinces.
Agreed.
Let me see what Jason said. I'm going to put on my glasses for this. Yeah. He quoted Jefferson Davis, all we ask is to be left alone. He said that many times.
I was about to say, go ahead.
You probably don't know this, but I got another book I think will be out next year. The Rise and Fall of the Southern Confederacy.
No.
I want to cover the whole thing, all in one volume, which will be about that big, 200,000 words.
It's going to be impressive.
But I hope, and I'm probably going to be disappointed, I hope it helps turn the narrative somewhat. I want to be part of this counterattack that Commander-in-Chief Kennedy talks about so often. And we are actually seeing the result of it. I'm delighted. It's never as fast as you want it to be, but it's happening. We've solved our financial issues, and now we're going on the offensive matter of fact, I'm going to be a small part of that next week. We're going to do a blog on Bill O'Reilly's book in which he slandered Nathan Bedford Forrest. Ah, yes.
Don't
I'm
buy it.
going to get a copy of that. I got a copy of the chapter on Forrest, but I need to look at some of the others.
We had a nice member that asked me if I wanted a copy. He had already gotten some. I do want to thank him because he saved me because I didn't want to buy it. And I'm glad that he did. And that was Derek Glover. I want to thank Mr. Glover for giving me the book. So we can kind of tear into it ourselves. Again, don't buy the book. I want to see it fail. And to quote Charles Lee, I'm looking forward to this episode or this video that Dr. Mitcham's doing. We are going to be sharing it out heavy. And again, I do think your next book, because you sent me a little bit of it to help me out with this series, actually. So I do encourage everybody to check it out. And, of course, we'll bring you on to talk about it. But I think it will play a part because I know your books have helped us in a lot of our research for these episodes, not just these, but a lot of SCV Chat episodes. So you can say that you've helped us reach millions of people with the truth. And I do think I see a change coming. I do agree with you. I don't think it's going to be as fast as anybody wants. It's been generations of brainwashing. It's going to probably take a couple of generations to get out from under it. But I can't wait to see it. And go ahead, Dr. Mitcham.
Oh, I'm just going to say, well, I'm lucky. I was blessed with a thick skin. Yeah, you're going to get attacked. My first 35 books were on Nazi Germany. And because I wrote on that, one guy accused me of being a Nazi. And I told him, I'm glad I didn't write on veterinary medicine. You would accuse me of being a poodle.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, I have to steal that for an extra for a comeback later if I ever get back to debating people online.
No charge.
Thank you. But it sounds like you had the same answer for what the South fight for than the book. So if you have anything you want to add, you can. If not, we can go on to the last question for tonight.
Not really. No, go ahead. Do your last question.
Okay. And this is the one I've been looking forward to because it's going to challenge some people's thoughts. Because the two most common names for this war in today's day and age, number 2 is war between the states. That is the term I use. The number 1 term is a dead gum lie looking you right in the face. The Civil War. I love Shelby Foote and his work. I've looked at a lot of interviews. I've been reading Shelby Foote's work. He's a phenomenal historian. I would put him with some of the best the South has ever had. But Civil War is not the correct name. Let me just real quick type up Civil War definition. A civil war is a violent conflict between organized groups within the same country fighting for political control to establish the change in government politics or to take over a government. A civil war is not 2 separate countries fighting, one fighting for independence and one to stop independence. That's not a civil war. A civil war, as I just said, a legal definition is they're fighting for control of the government.
That definition's slightly different, although there's really no conflict there. But a civil war is a struggle between 2 or more factions for control of the government.
Yes, sir.
So
I like yours better.
Yeah, that's succinct. But,
yes, sir. And so that kind of goes into the point with this next question that I wanted to tackle. So as soon as I saw this question, I knew I wanted it on tonight because I don't like that term being applied to us. This wasn't a civil war. We, as Davis said, we just want to be left alone with our own separate government here in Dixieland. We couldn't care less what the Union did. Just leave us alone. And so this goes into the next question. And it's the last question of the night. Did the South fight for the overthrow the United States government?
Absolutely not. We fought for our independence. We're not interested in what goes on up in Yankee Land. I wish we could still afford to take that view, because some of those people up there are crazy. They don't know which bathroom to use. They, Portland, Chicago, just no, I don't know. I'm about to give up on them. I don't know. And as for what to call the war, I came up with a name for it.
Ooh.
And it was the War of Southern Self-Determination.
Mm.
And absolutely nobody picked up on it. But I did call it that.
I know one name for it is the War of Many Names. I discovered that doing some research. It has so many names. There's a name for it, just calling it the War of Many Names. And it's true. And of course, the one that sadly stuck is not what happened. But to kind of go ahead.
Well, it was a war over a verb. United States is, or the United States are.
I like that.
But unfortunately, it didn't work out too well for us. Now,
Sad.
Illinois is talking about leaving the Union. And I'm sitting there saying, I hope you have better luck with it than we did.
A lot more better luck. Golly.
I wish them a bon voyage.
Oh, I know. California threatened secession. And I mean, a lot of people were like, okay, have fun. Y'all go over there.
Well, I told you Mitcham's idea on how to handle that situation. First, you let them secede. In 5 years, the whole place is going to be falling apart, and they're going to be begging to come back. Then, but we allow them to come back to the Union, but only as a territory. They will have one unelected representative in the U.S. House of Representatives. He will be appointed. He will not have a vote, and the territorial governor will be appointed by our people. I think Harrison Dawes would be a good choice.
California would hate me. Oh, I would. There'd be a lot of things I'd do in California. A lot of different things. I would get that state on track. I will say that. I'd get y'all on track. Y'all would like me at first, or would hate me at first, but long term, I think y'all'd like me. But
well, actually, you might have pretty close to majority once you flush the illegals.
Probably, honestly, let's be, the war of federal aggression, the war of northern aggression. I know my dad uses the war of northern aggression when he taught me history, and he also used the war between the states a lot. That's probably why it stuck with me the most. But also, Mississippi uses the war between the states in a lot of official documents. So that's kind of the one I've been using. But Mr. Lincoln's War, War of Northern Aggression, War for Southern Independence, War to Prevent Southern Independence are all great names. I just beg that you don't use this one. Now, I know some of our people do, and they got a good viewpoint on it. You can't correct people if they're not checking you out. I get it. Because I asked another well-respected historian of mine, Like, why do you use Civil War? I don't understand. You don't like the name. He's like, I hate the name. It's a stupid name because it wasn't a Civil War. But he was like, but that's what people think it is. And if you want to get people in the door to change their mind, you're going to have to put it on your stuff. So I feel for him. I understand that. I know that was a tough decision for him. I don't blame him.
Well, treat that as a minor point. You can't, you're not going to change their minds. Just pray for them every once in a while. One will come around.
And as long as you can get a couple ones, sooner or later, you'll have the majority. And I do think we'll get there one day. But to kind of close out tonight's episode, I'm going to give the book's answer to, did the South fight to overthrow the United States government? And, of course, Dr. Mitcham will give his response. And, of course, the book and Dr. Mitcham, no surprise here, are in agreement. No, the South fought to establish its own government. Secession did not destroy the Union, but merely reduced its territorial extent. The United States existed when there were only 13 states, and it would have existed when there were only 20 states left. The charge brought by Lincoln that the aim of the Southerners were to overthrow the government was no more true than if King George III had said that the secession of the American colonies from Great Britain had in view the destruction of the British government. The government of Great Britain was not destroyed by the secession of the Southern states or by the American states in 1783, nor would the government of the United States have been destroyed if the Southern states had succeeded in repelling the attacks of the North in 1861 to 1865.
Well said. I'm glad y'all picked that book to analyze and dissect.
Yes, sir, we did too. And of course, I think you've also given us a lot of great information for us to use tonight. Again, please share these episodes out. There will be an overall series playlist on YouTube when we end. And of course, we'll be making a lot of production or preview material to try to get people interested in this series very soon. I'm working on a preview series for episode 1. Clips that are about a minute, 2 minutes long to hopefully bring some more outside interest of this. But I did think it was necessary for our fellow members and, of course, just people who love history and know the truth already. It can be hard to defend when you have a couple people yelling at you, giving you death threats, and then just boldly lying sometimes. I have never been more shocked than when the historian, a person that's supposed to be bringing forth truth and facts, will blatantly look you in the eye and lie and be so convinced by their lie that they believe it. It blows my mind. I know a Mississippi studies teacher here in Mississippi that gave me a lie, and he was convinced it was the truth. And that's why I'm like, people believe you because you said that with such conviction, but have you ever stopped to hear yourself say it?
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, they're not really lying. A lie is a deliberate attempt to deceive. And these people aren't deliberately trying to deceive you. They are telling you what they think is true. And that's the scariest part.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, I do want to thank everybody for hanging in with us. I know it was a bit longer episode, but there was a lot to dive into tonight. Of course, Dr. Mitcham, bless his heart, he got the most questions of any of the guests so far. He got 5. To put that in retrospect, Commander-in-Chief Kennedy got 3. Me and Connor got 2. And hopefully our guest next week is only going to get 1 official question from the book and a couple others. Dr. Mitcham got 5, so I threw a lot at Dr. Mitcham. But I think it was some stuff that needed to be said. Go ahead, Dr. Mitcham.
Oh, congratulations to Larry McClooney. He's got a new book out on black slave owners. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And also, Hardy has written one on feeding Lee's army, which I'm gonna have to get into that before I publish my next book, because I've always felt that. I'm a graduate of Commando General Staff College. I qualified through the rank of Major General, and one of the things they say at the higher levels of the Army is amateurs talk about battles, professionals talk about logistics. And, logistics dictate battles sometimes, and they certainly did during our War for Independence. I didn't mean to get off on a tangent, but there you go.
Hey, sometimes it's good to get on a tangent, especially when you have Dr. Mitcham on. You just, I don't say anything. I just let you run because I know it's going to be full of information. I do love that. But I would like to ask everybody to thank Dr. Mitcham for coming on tonight. Of course, thank you to our Patreon members. Make sure again to share this episode out and tune in tomorrow for Tennessee Tuesdays. And make sure to tune in Wednesday for Look Around Florida, and tune in Thursday for Look Around the Confederation, and tune in Friday. Friday Night Live will have a new episode on the battles of Kings Mountain this Friday. And of course, check out Mr. Hardy with History, I think is Michael C. Hardy's new, or not new, but repackaged Sunday Night Live. So make sure to check that out. Support these great people because they're doing a lot of information you guys can do too. We do have one question that I think would be cool to answer, so I'll share that in a second before we sign off. But thank you all for supporting this episode. It's been a great one. I've enjoyed this series a lot. Someone did mention BR, important topic that needs to be broken down and thoroughly explained are the declarations of secession in the Cornerstone speech. BR, I said it at kind of the beginning of the episode, but I'll re-say it. We will, I don't know when, it'll be sometime in the future, probably after we get done with this series. I will spend, or Connor will spend, GCB, one of us will spend an episode on the declarations of secession, and then we'll probably do another episode on the Cornerstone speech. Those are two big topics that need to be discussed. But again, tonight is about building a foundation to give you an argument back. But again, the best way to be able to fight these people is to get these books we've talked about to expand your knowledge. There's a lot of stuff tonight I learned that will help me in these debates. These episodes were just designed to give you a foundation and a general understanding. But we will go down and break through them, as I said. We will bring Dr. Mitcham on in the future to talk about his new book. I might mess with him and make it 2 volumes on purpose, 2 parts, because, as he said, it's a huge book, so I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about, and I can't wait to get it and read it myself. And again, tune in next week as we continue Confederate Catechism. Again, I've loved this series and what it's taught me and what I hope it's teaching y'all. Thank you all for supporting. Dr. Mitcham, is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I enjoyed it, Moose. Always a pleasure being on your show.
It is always a pleasure to have you on, sir. As I said, I was saving you and still am saving you kind of towards the end of this series to kind of wrap everything up in a bow. I think we'll have a good time kind of going after some of the most attacked questions that people will throw at us. I can't wait for that episode myself. But thank you all. And until next time, remember to share this episode out and no fumar in the elevator. Good night, everybody.
Good night.